All right, everybody, welcome back to the Manufacturing Alliance Chat and Chow. As always, I'm your host, Tony DeMakis, with Alliance Specialties and Laser Sales. And it's where we do all things mold making. That's not mold making. I know, that's weird, right? We do the polishing, the laser welding, the laser engraving, hot runner manifold repair, and preventative mold maintenance. So we are mold makers who don't do mold making because we want to leave that to you guys, and we just want to handle all those other things that you don't want to do or have time to do or feel like you can. So that's our niche. We also have a full line of laser welding and laser engraving equipment that are made here in the United States in the Chicagoland area. So you really get to have those American-made products, which is important for so many people right now. So, this show is not about that. This show is about what's going on in the manufacturing world. And we like to have guests on that can help tell those stories and just grow our industry as a whole. And today I'm really excited. I have Michael Guckes on. Michael is the chief economist and director of analytics at Gardner Intelligence, which I know, to somebody like me that doesn't love numbers, that's a lot of words in a title. But I promise it's not going to be all data and numbers and facts and figures, because that's not what we do. We want to talk to people and hear stories from people and talk about things that actually matter. And so today we're going to be talking more about how do we take that tribal knowledge that we have as industry leaders and pass that on to younger generations, and how do we grow our industry, and what is Michael seeing as far as the potential for growth and what's going on. So I'm going to bring Michael on now. You think that would be easy?
I think I'm here.
Yeah, you're here. And
I think I'm here. You don't have to bring me on.
And you are unmuted. So that's a good thing. How are you, my friend?
The danger of giving me control of my own microphone.
Well, somebody's got to do it.
So it's the risk you take.
You're harmless. You're a good guy. I know I can trust you to do this.
There you go. Well, there's a lot of truth to knowing who you can trust,
So I'm going to let you go on for a little bit and tell people who you are. You're here with Gardner Business Intelligence, right?
We just go by Gardner Intelligence anymore. We had a point in time where we didn't know what we were, and a couple years back we decided Gardner Intelligence. It was a good blend of not being too long, but also getting sort of the keywords in there. But yeah, we've been for a long time. Steve Klein Jr., who's one of the owners of Gardner Business Media, he's been doing, and really it was his dad even before him, doing the Gardner Business Index. And as many of the people who are listening in know, Gardner has a huge reach in the manufacturing space. And so we get a lot of information. We hear a lot of things from manufacturers all across the US. And then our group and my goal specifically is to take that information and make it actionable, right? Because information without a way to use it to profit from it really isn't worth all that much. And so what we try to do for the good of the community is, we send out those monthly surveys, and we appreciate everybody who gets those. I know that first and foremost, a lot of people, yourself included, probably get a ton of emails from all over the place every day, and you want to just click all of them and say, send them to the trash. I'm really thankful. No, yeah, right. No, never. But we're so thankful for the people who do receive our emails and then fill out those quick surveys. We try to make it easy, quick. And then when you send that back, my job is to make it valuable to you, because if you're doing work for me, then I better be doing some good work for you in exchange. And so that's what we try to do. And we've really developed this product over the last couple of years. We've got a new product out there that's a derivative of the old GBI, which talks about, what's happening with manufacturing from a pretty high level, what's happening with orders and supplier deliveries and, backlogs and employment and all these other major trends, which can be really helpful for business leaders. It helps them to know, what's really happening in my industry, because there's not a lot of great places to go for manufacturing data at a level of detail at which, someone is going to be able to say, yeah, I'm going to stake part of my company, on these trends or what's going on in the industry. You want to make sure you have good data and that it's actionable. And so, we really believe that we provide that in a way that really no one else is doing. And so, we're excited about that. We've got this new product I was telling you about, this advanced GBI. We've taken our data and really moved it to a more granular level by looking at our data by the materials that are being used. So like, for example, if you have customers who are using just thermoplastics or just thermosets, if they're using, glass fiber, not carbon fiber, in the past, you didn't necessarily have the ability to look at those kinds of breakouts. I might be a glass fiber shop, and my world is totally different from a carbon fiber fabricator, right? And so what we've done in the last year or so is figure out how do we break out our data so that I can show you what's happening in the glass fiber space versus carbon, thermosets versus thermoplastics, and a bunch of other things like that. So we're really excited to get that out there and get that in the hands of people who are going to be able to make some profitable decisions on that. So that's what we've been up to. When we're not, like you and I were doing, defending the free world, right? There we go. Yeah. So
yeah, we're both locked and loaded.
There you go.
Say. I got the bug assault. You've got the Nerf zapper.
That's right.
Don't let anybody tell us that we're not trying to protect the world here.
That's right. So that's what we've been doing. It's really figuring out how do we help people make smart, profitable decisions. And this year, 2020 was like, how do I just survive? And I think we helped a lot of people, I think, through that time understand that this wasn't going to be a protracted recession, that this ended up being pretty much V-shaped. It's kind of an awkward V. But, we've seen a rebound that, we didn't know if we were going to have that rebound in the middle of the year. And then what we've seen now in 2021 is a lot of good strength. We've had 7-8 months now of just month over month growth, expansion in manufacturing. And it's showing itself in a couple of different ways. So that's really healthy to know that, we're seeing new orders have been coming in since the fourth quarter of 2020. We've seen people trying to increase production, right? Supply chains are all messed up, and that's sort of crippling the ability of firms to change production as fast as they want to keep up with new orders. So the result of that has been, growing backlogs, sort of the natural, it's a natural event from that. It's like math, right? New orders minus production is your backlog. But then we've also seen an employment trend in the last 5 months or so that's been really encouraging. So we see all of these manufacturers trying to do everything possible to keep up with the surge in new orders that we've been seeing. Again, and it's not like a 1 month thing. We've seen month over month new orders improvement since really, I think it was like October, maybe September of last year. So it's really good, It doesn't mean that everything's going to be gravy in 2021. I'm sure you can tell me that as much as the next guy. There's still all sorts of challenges, but, we'll help you through those too.
I think the key to that though, right? Like you can look at the data and you can make best guesses based on what it's telling you, but there's no crystal ball to say that 2021 is going to be better than 2020, which is going to be worse than blah, 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 blah. Yeah. We don't know for sure, right? You can just look at the data and make a best guess, right? Like when we started this, all the data told me that LinkedIn was going to work out perfectly for our chat and chow. But for some reason, Facebook and YouTube are working fine and LinkedIn is not. So unfortunately, people that we're going to watch on LinkedIn are not going to be able to watch this live, but we will record it and we'll put it out for them and we'll just do the best we can. So Mary Kate, if you're listening to this, if you could just put a message on LinkedIn that has the links for the YouTube or the Facebook, that would be awesome. And people can go there and listen. For whatever reason, LinkedIn hates us today. All the last couple shows seemed like it was going to be roses, right? So that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is it doesn't always go the way you have planned. And so you have to navigate and adjust and make little turns here as they come up.
Or big ones. I mean, that was the story of 2020, right? Right. I mean, think about, one of the things I loved seeing in the first half of 2020 was how adaptable so many shops were, right? I mean, everybody knows what PPE is. If you didn't know what PPE was at the beginning of 2020, you could be, forgiven. But nowadays, when we see just how much demand is out there for stuff, and when we looked at what was happening in the first half of 2020, Jan Schaefer, who's one of my colleagues, she said, look at the amount of atypical work and atypical orders occurring. Shops had nothing to do. All of a sudden, everything dried up, and then they would get a call out of the blue, and someone would say, "I'm desperate. Can you make like an endless supply of widgets?" And they would say, "Yeah." And then all of a sudden, they didn't. They couldn't fulfill all the orders. But that was the beauty of. That's sort of the beauty of our economy and the capitalist system, where you're rewarded for risk taking, right?
Yeah.
And you're rewarded for innovation, right? So that's those are great things. I think that's a huge part of what makes this country great.
Yeah, and I'll say it every time I have one of these shows. I think that I personally am really proud of being not only in manufacturing but in plastics as a whole, because of the way that the industry has stepped up over the last year and met the needs of people that we didn't even know there were needs for, right?
Yeah.
From nobody takes for granted packaging right now, because all that packaging was so essential and necessary, whether it was for testing, whether it was for whatever it was.
Right.
People are seeing it now in a very real way. Nobody's taking plexiglass for granted right now, because everything is
not.
plexiglass. And manufacturing as a whole stood up and took notice and made something great happen. And I think that's something that we can look at for the future as a positive for our industry.
Yeah. Well, and there were so many great stories out there about, high school and college kids, 3D printing visor clips and stuff so that you could wear, sort of custom fitted protective gear, right? I mean, that's fantastic, right? And it makes manufacturing real for those kids. And, when other people see that, right, it blows away, I think, all those misconceptions that still frustrate me. We still have people who think manufacturing is dirty, it's dangerous, all these other things. And it drives me up a wall when I hear that.
Yeah.
Because you can go and look at these high school and college kids, and then, the adults, of course, the manufacturers are already out there. And it's not like that. And it drives me crazy.
Be honest, it can be. And
it can be, yeah.
There are some jobs where they are more dirty, and you get your hands dirty, and you're in there, and you're in the grind, and you're taking things apart, and you're fixing things, and you're doing all the repairs. That's real. I mean, you can't sugarcoat that and say that doesn't exist, but it's not. Yeah, it is. And you know what? There's people that love that about their job, that they love to be able to get in there and get dirty and
Sure.
Work with their hands and do those things. So it's a positive on both sides, but it's not the Stone Ages.
Right.
Most companies take really, 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 really huge precautions to make sure that their employees are safe, and that things are in place to make sure that everything is going well, and there's nobody in danger when they're making products or parts or repairs, because those are our people. That's our family. I think the difference that I see is, in a big corporate structure, you're more of a number, right? You kind of get lost in the shuffle. And I think with a lot of the manufacturing companies that I know of, you're an intricate person. You're a real part of the organization and what's going on. And you matter to everybody. It's not just gonna, they're not just gonna fill you in with the next person.
Yeah. Well, I think that what you're pointing out is that there are cultural ideas that can be really powerful, if implemented top down, and your shop is a great point. I mean, you put pictures of your shop on LinkedIn all the time, of the products and the things that you guys are doing, right? The molds that you guys are cleaning up. And every time I look at your shop, it's bright. Okay. It's clean, relatively speaking. It's not, I mean, I could take a white glove, but who cares, right? But it's bright, it's clean. It's a place that people, I think, want to come to work at. You're not working in a dirty cave where you're smelling fumes all day long, right?
No.
I mean, that's no one's going to want that, right? And we know better. You know better. That, no one's going to stick around so that they can work in Tony's dirty, cave with crappy lighting, and it smells awful. We can be so much more beyond that. But that comes really from the top down, right?
Yeah.
You treat people like family, and that's huge. I mean, I hear that from so many successful shops. Any shop that gets that, I think they're miles ahead.
Right. It's a misconception, like you said, that people have, because it's what they think, it's what they know, it's what they've been told. and they've
Right.
never had the opportunity to go into these places and see it firsthand for themselves.
Right.
So, you and I have talked in the past. What does that lead to? That leads to a huge gap in employees. That
Mhm.
that leads to people not wanting to be excited to get into an industry that they don't know about because schools don't encourage it, or parents don't encourage it, or whatever and whatnot. And then what happens is you have a bunch of people that are ready to retire, and you don't know
Yeah.
how the industry is going to move forward unless you can refill that pipeline.
Right. Right. Exactly. And even then, the technology changes so much so, right? I mean, we're not dealing with manual machines nearly as much as we are now, right? You know, with CNC,
Right.
it's a whole nother skill set, and it's not um, insurmountable. I think that there are a lot of jobs out there where or skills that you can learn that are very much applicable to uh, anything computer related, right? Well, you can take those same ideas of same people and they've got a leg up when it comes to, I think, learning CNC programming or things of that nature, right? All the CAD work and the CAM work that's out there, and the classes that you can learn. One of the things that you and I both do, which I think is so awesome. I hope that doesn't sound egotistical there, but but like,
Never.
so
Not from
yeah,
you.
never. But you're still playing the guitar. I
I
remember
am.
months ago you said you were going to spend like 15 minutes a day every day practicing the guitar.
Yep.
And I think you've even come on the air and performed at least once or twice. I've heard such things.
Yeah, I haven't done it on a show. If I had my
I
guitar,
was going to
you would
say,
have told me
like,
you were going to do that.
you better be
I
glad
would
it's
have
not
done
right
that, but
next to
it's not here. So I can't do that today. But that's a good challenge for me for next week, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so I do something a little different. I love to study. So, like, not to make people feel like my head is this big, but I like studying logic and reasoning. Understanding what's a valid argument, what's a sound argument. What are premises, what are arguments. How do you get out of certain traps in arguments? And I've been taking a class on Coursera about this. It's been absolutely fascinating. And though I'm not doing that, I've been studying quantum mechanics. Not like at like the cutting edge level, but just like the history, of Niels Bohr versus Einstein, and like what is quantum entanglement and all these other things. It's amazing how um, science is really advanced, but it's like wisdom. It's like you get to a certain point where you realize, wow, we don't know nearly as much as we thought, and it's fascinating
Yeah.
when you begin to see like just how much is left to understand. So I find that so fascinating. So
I
so,
find it
so this is
fascinating.
where the application doesn't quite work out, because you see, if you get into a disagreement with your wife, right? Not that we would ever call these things a
Never.
fight. You could get out your guitar and serenade her, right? I'm like, well, that's a valid argument, but it's not sound. And these things don't. I'm sure that you're going to have a lot more success than I am.
Well, I think,
Around.
as relatively intelligent men, we know that when you're getting in an argument with your wife, you don't ever say that's not a sound argument. You say, yes, honey.
That's right. That's right.
That's the wise part of that conversation.
There you
I
go.
find it amazing that you and I are friends if you're studying all those things, because I don't know what you said, much less have an interest to be able to study them. But it's great that some people do, because I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I
Yeah.
can't. I don't think I would be able to retain that very well.
Well, it's really cool because with entanglement, and I'll stop this here because otherwise, like, it just we'll leave the reservation. But entanglement, so Jason Bell and Niels Bohr proved out that you can actually move faster than the speed of light. Information between like quantums and stuff, like you can actually exceed the speed of light. Like Einstein didn't like that because it really screws up, his theories. Like his whole world is based on you can't exceed the speed of light, right?
Okay.
So like it's kind of mind blowing. And this is stuff that's not really old. This is stuff that was figured out in the 30s and 40s, and then we're able to actually test it and prove it like in the last decade or two. It's pretty cool.
So I think what's cool to me about that is it speaks to an issue that I think a lot of people have, whether it's in work, whether it's in life, whether it's whatever application, right? If you stick with that old world thinking of we can never move faster than the speed of light, right? That's really fast, but now you've limited yourself.
Yeah.
And if you don't challenge that line of thinking, then you just continue in that line of thinking and you do things the way that you've always done them because that's the way that we've always done them, and there's no other way to do that.
Right. Yeah, you don't break out, and I mean, economics is no different, right? I mean, if you look at economic theory of the 60s and the 70s, it's like physics and medical science of the 50s and 60s. My grandfather bought my dad an encyclopedia set from like, the 60s. And like what it says about cancer, 180%, like 180 degrees wrong. Like it's just so wrong. It was like, cancer can't be cured, like you can't do anything about it, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And of course, nowadays, like there's so much, right? And so you're right. Like you really, I mean, no matter what you're doing, right? Whether you're a business owner or just a guy who's got a Coursera account, right? I think there's something to be said about the value of always learning, always being willing to test your assumptions.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you're going to grow. Otherwise, you trap yourself, right? I think Steve Jobs, when he gave this really famous speech at Stanford, it was one of those graduation speeches like back in the early 2000s. He said, like, don't trap yourself. Like, don't allow dogma to trap you. Like old thinking, don't allow it to trap you, because otherwise you don't get an Apple computer, right? You don't get the iPhone.
No.
You don't get like, electric vehicles and all this other stuff.
You don't get SpaceX landing a rocket.
You stole it from me. I mean, was that not the coolest thing, watching the SpaceX boosters come down and landing simultaneously? Like they break the sound barrier, right? They land. I mean, it's like, dang.
Yeah. And you go from that line of thinking to, listen, if we send a rocket, we lose all this stuff. It's just garbage. It's blown up. It's a one-time thing. It's a single serve plastic pouch is essentially what it is, right?
And it's expensive.
Yeah. And then you have somebody that comes along and says, no, we don't have to do it that way.
Exactly.
Let's challenge that and make it better. And you got not everybody. You have a lot of people saying, you're insane. That's not going to work. You can't do that.
Right.
I don't want to go down a political rabbit hole, but you've got COVID, right? And you've got some people that say, we'll have a vaccine in 9 months. And you got people saying, you're crazy. It's never going to happen. You can't do it. It's not going to happen. And here we are. And we have a vaccine that was created and people are getting it. And hopefully we're done with this thing fairly soon. But, I think challenging that line of thinking is essential. And I think whether you're in your business, your company, your shop, whatever that is, I think it's important to listen to all ideas, right? So you've got people that have very strong tribal knowledge, something that you and I have talked about in the past, that wisdom of actually being in there, right? Not just knowing how to do something, but having the wisdom of experience in doing it for years and years and years and years. And that's great. And you can't replace tribal knowledge, but you also can't put a value on curiosity either.
Right. Yeah. They have to go hand in hand. Right. I have some good friends who are doctors, right? And for as smart as doctors are today, right, they all will tell you that, without the accomplishments, the incremental accomplishments of all those people before them, we wouldn't be where we are today. We'd still think that you can't cure cancer. Right. So I absolutely agree that, there has to be a trade-off. This is something we had talked about, like between the generations. And we fit right in between. There's a generation that's kind of leaving the workforce for retirement. And then there's those people who are now, I hate to say it, they're almost 20 years younger than us.
Oh my gosh.
They're ridiculous. Now coming into the workforce. I'm like, that hurts my heart to think that I'm that old now.
I don't feel it. My hair looks it, but I don't feel it.
And I'm getting in the beard a little bit. I'm like, man, I'm going to have to go beardless. I haven't been beardless for
just embrace it. Go with it. I think the gray is distinguished, and I think it gives me a little bit of credibility.
Makes my wife jealous is what it does. She's like, how come you can have gray hair and I can't? I was like, babe, I don't write the rules.
You tell her you can.
I think she's beautiful just as she is, by the way. And I want that on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. Like, she's awesome. So, Yeah, but it puts us in a unique point. Getting back to where we were, I think it puts us in a unique point, right, Tony, where we've been fed into by that whole generation of men and women ahead of us. We need to capture that knowledge. I think somehow you do. It's almost like by osmosis, like just
Right.
by working with them for 20 years now, 8 to 5, whatever it should be. We've learned so much. But at the same time, we need to realize that we need to be feeding into those people who are just coming out of college or have, a couple of years of experience at most, right? And it really, so, one of the things that we were going to talk about today for fun is, what are the things, what's the best advice that you and I have received from that older generation? Let's get it on the table and then talk about how, we need to be transferring that on, to those people who won't get the benefit of the people that we know and who have fed into us, but it's time for us to start feeding into them.
Yeah, we need to be that game of telephone, but in a positive way.
There you go.
And we have to be willing. It's so complicated. Human beings are so complicated, right? Because you have to get the people that are above you to trust you enough to share that information. And not think that once they give you the information, they're now going to be replaced because it's going to somebody that's younger and more affordable or lower on the pay scale or whatever that is. It's hard to get people to realize that their true benefit is their knowledge and their wisdom and their expertise and their ability to teach others that stuff and help further along the business. And then have the younger people be willing to accept that information from people that they may consider washed up dinosaurs that don't know what they're doing because they can't use a computer or they have to do things the old way or they don't embrace the new technology or whatever that is.
Yeah.
There has to be that leveling of and like you said, we're in the middle of that gap.
Yeah.
And just getting people to communicate and understand with each other, like I need you and I need you, and together we can be great.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, people dealing with people, not only is it complicated, I think that it's just messy,
Yeah.
I went to school and ended up with all these strong technical skills, right? But, I have the social skills of a brick some days, and my wife will attest to that, my success as an economist is largely because if you look at the best economists, we're really just comedians who know data. And so, my wife gives me no shortage of self-deprecating jokes I can use, and that has helped. I'm sure that has helped my career.
Yeah.
But so people are messy, relationships are messy, right? It's not clean. There are no clear rules. What I say to one person might offend another person. They might take it totally different ways. But like you said, those older people who have fed into us, there's a couple of things that we have to really appreciate about them. And, the first one is that they took the time, right, to talk to us, to invest in us. And that's why, we need to be doing that as well. But the other thing too, is that you have to be vulnerable when you do that, right? If I tell you, look, here's what I've learned, here's something I want to pass down to you. There's always that possibility that you're going to look at me as the younger guy and be like, you're full of it, or you don't know what you're talking about, or, that's how the dinosaurs did it. Right. And all of a sudden you've opened yourself up to criticism that you didn't have to open yourself up to. Right. And so we really need to be appreciative of that. And we need to be, as a younger person, I wish I had been quiet more often, shut up and listen a lot more. Because I think as a 20-something-year-old economist coming out of a, fancy college, right? I thought I knew a lot more than I really did. And I think that really hindered my career because I came across as arrogant, brash, all these other things. I didn't mean to be those ways. I didn't mean to be that way, right? I just wanted to do the job right, and I put it right like this, right? I mean, you can do the job technically right and torque off a lot of people, and that's no longer right. That's not the right way to get it done anymore. So that's the kind of stuff, again, like just being vulnerable, right? And we have to do the same thing. That's hard. No one teaches us to be vulnerable. We pretty much learn to be the exact opposite,
Yes.
To be self-sufficient, right? To pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, right? And to not be vulnerable, right? I mean, the Terminator, the guy from Die Hard. I mean, none of our icons are like this, right? But that's how we really need to be. I know it's mind blowing.
It's a skill that you have to practice, right? Like anything else.
Absolutely.
You have to practice humility and vulnerability and accept that. Today I was talking to my son because he's got asynchronous learning today, which means they just give him assignments and he doesn't have to log into class today. So he's got Wednesday kind of off as long as he does all his work. And I said, hey, Jack, if you don't have anything to do today, we're doing a podcast at 11:30. If you're bored. And he was like, I was like, you're that excited, huh? You're that interested. He was like, I'm good. I don't think I need to listen to that. He just keeps me humble.
If he had known that we were going to have Nerf guns on the air, he totally would have come so that he could shoot you live.
He probably would have liked to do that. And then
my kids, we couldn't have this discussion. My son would light me up throughout this entire discussion with his Nerf guns if he were here.
My wife said, I wish I could listen, but I can't listen because and Jack, without missing a beat, goes, because you keep falling asleep. And I was like, boy, come on now. Give me a little bit of credit. People like me. I mean, I don't know why, but they like me. It's okay. But it's good to have those people that keep you humble. Yes. Speaking of that, I'm going to put in the chat a link for a survey for the show. And if you're watching it, if you watch it later and you like it and you want to give us any feedback, you want to know you want to suggest some guests or whatever, put that in the chat in the form, and we'll learn from it. How about that? We'll accept your suggestions because we are humbling ourselves to find out how badly we suck.
We already know. It's just you.
That's a benefit, isn't it? It's so freeing when you can just admit that and just be good and go, listen, it's a work in progress.
Dude, trying to keep a facade about yourself, it's exhausting.
Totally.
I mean, it's absolutely exhausting. And when you think about it too, when you're constantly trying to keep that facade alive, you trap yourself, you're not free to put your best efforts forward. You're wasting all of your energy on stuff. Again, going back to Steve Jobs, he wore that black mock turtleneck thing. Like the rumor is that like, that's literally all he had. He didn't want to have to think about what he was going to wear. So like his outfit was jeans and those black mock turtlenecks. Like that was it.
That's like all he had.
And I was like, I wish I could get away with that. That would be awesome.
I mean, you could get away with it.
Well, now that I'm working from home, I just, we could wear our pajamas all day long, I suppose.
It's one of the things that I hope, I think that should loosen up a little bit, right? Like you can pull off a mock turtleneck or a t-shirt or whatever. It doesn't take away from the knowledge base that you have.
No, it doesn't.
My opinion.
Yeah. So, well, so we had talked about previously, leading up to today, what's the best advice that you've received from that generation ahead of us, right? So I went around the last 2 weeks or so and asked a lot of the people, basically my circle, and this is another thing that I found super helpful is I have a circle of mentors.
Yeah.
They're from my church, they're from work, they're from prior jobs. And all the time they're my sounding board, and that has been so helpful to my career. And I'll tell you what, for the people who don't have that, regardless of your age, right? Like that is huge. I know guys, I mean, heck, even, every CEO of a major company has a board of directors. They have people that, are there to support them, right? And help them figure things out. Sure, you have something similar. So no matter where you are, by age or by title or whatever, it doesn't matter, but have that circle of advisors around you. That's one of the things I've learned. So I reached out to that circle in my case. And, I said, so what are some things that we need to be teaching people, like, what are the best lessons you've learned, in your career? And so I had a lot of great responses. I'll start with one, right? And then I'm going to let you hop in, because otherwise this becomes my podcast and not yours. I could go on for a long time. But one of the things I heard from one of them was to listen. We need to be quick to listen and slow to speak. And man, I know personally that is so true for me. And the hard part is, like, I know that, that's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. I can know that I need to shut up more often. But I don't, right? It's like the failure to apply the knowledge is a failure of wisdom, right? Because that's what wisdom is. Wisdom is the right application of knowledge. And so we not only need to know these things, but we really need to lay them on our hearts so that, it's actually put to use. You got to put that knowledge to use. So that's one of the things I've learned is, and man, if I had known that, if I had really had someone kicking my butt about that when I was younger, I think my career path would have accelerated a lot faster than it did.
So. I agree. I think, one of the things that I've gotten from my father, he's like, he's the guy that is imparting wisdom on me still, right?
That's awesome.
Built this business and he's done a lot of things, and I respect the hell out of him. Is to make decisions and not just sit on them, but make decisions and then adjust and make the next decision. So, I think sometimes we gather too much information and we wait on that information thinking that it might change, or, you don't know how to act. You don't know what's going to happen. And indecision is a decision. So you have to make a decision and then adjust what's going to happen from there and then make another decision. You can't know what's going to be 8 steps down the road. You can try and plan that out like a chess game, but at any point it could get skewed. And you have to continue moving the ball forward little by little. You have to keep moving and not just wait.
But you got to make a move. So you stole the next one I was going to say. One of my mentors said, just do it. Not to steal from Nike or anything, but his point was, you just got to get out there, and eventually you're going to have to take a leap. Like we all have to take a leap, or else you're going to live in a essentially in a jail cell, self-imposed jail, right? If you're afraid of everything, if you're afraid of failure, which I think is a big deal in our culture, right? Is this idea that, I can't do anything because I might fail, but then you become trapped in this like stasis, right? And so that was one of the ones I had gone to is, don't be afraid to fail. I blew it terribly. I had a business for years and I got so involved in product development, right? I forgot that I need to market it. You can have the best product in the world. If nobody knows it exists, your sales are going to be zero, right? Great product times 0 units sold is still 0.
Well, and I think it's only failure if you don't learn, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that helps in that wisdom side of things. I think wisdom is a big word, right? Wisdom is that biblical word that
it is.
That people don't really get. I think sometimes, they ask, what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? What's the difference between education and wisdom? They're not the same thing. I think you said it well, where wisdom is how do you apply that knowledge that you have and actually make a difference with it or do something with it. It's not just that I know, right? It's that I've experienced things that give me that wisdom.
Yeah. Well, and it's where it rests too, right? I mean, knowledge is going to sit in your head, but really wisdom is a head and heart kind of thing. It's as much, and people talk about gut feelings, right? Making gut decisions. And, what's really cool about that is that like they've proven that there's legitimacy behind those gut decisions, right? We can do something that might gain us an advantage right now today, but in the long run, right, we know it's not the right thing to do. Whether it's, and in the case of a manufacturer, it might be, well, I can make a quick dollar today and never deal with this customer again because ultimately I'm not serving their greater need. Or I can try to work with them and it may be a little painful and it may not be profitable right away, but it's the right thing for them. And I'm going to just take the gamble that they're going to see that in the end I'm providing for them the product, the solution that they really needed, right?
Well, even not just a customer base, but for employees, right? For your team. COVID happened, everybody freaked out. There were two camps of people. One camp of people said, we need to save the company, which meant their bottom line, and they made cuts. They just looked at numbers and said, these people, we can't afford to keep you, we don't know what's going to happen. And then other companies said, what do we do to keep our people, because we understand that those are the most important asset that we have, and we can't lose that. They're the people that are going to help us get through this. And that's that whole thing where I don't know where we're going to get the money for this yet. There was no PPE at that point.
It was triple P.
Yeah, no, there was no PPP at that point. It was just, what do we do? How do we handle this? What's that direction? Our gut told us we cannot lose the people that we have. They're too instrumental to what we do. Other people might have said, we got to cut some people so that we can keep the business rolling. It's just, where do you fit in that spectrum? What is your moral compass? What is your gut, head, heart telling you?
Yeah. Well, and I think that, so that really beautifully rolls into the next thing, which is to have grace, there's right and wrong.
Word.
Man,
it's such a big word.
Grace.
Yeah.
It's a deep word. That is for sure. But, we look at in the last couple of years, there's no grace anymore, right? We're losing it so quickly. I'm right, you're wrong, or vice versa. There's no more middle ground. Everything is sort of pushed upon you, it's by force. And because of that, we've lost the idea of grace, like when I get into a disagreement with a colleague, right? They'll say, you've made me mad as heck, but I know your heart is in the right place. And so they don't sit there and unload on me like I probably rightly deserve to be unloaded upon, there's grace in that. And that is so powerful. When we understand that, you're doing the best you can, and I think that that's something that it's hard to understand. I think people in positions of power higher up, they need grace, those decisions that you described, right? I mean, Gardner went through that last year, just like so many other shops and manufacturers did. We had to make really difficult decisions. Nobody enjoys having to tell someone, I'm so sorry, that you can't stay. Like there's just not enough money. And so we have to have grace in those situations. Understand, the ownership is doing the very best that they can. That they're putting in extra time and effort, and there's no joy in what they're having to do. Those decisions are painful, but we need to have grace with one another. And so that's at the high level, but you bring it down to, the one-on-one level between us and our colleagues, right? It's the same thing, realizing that, what somebody says and how we interpret it, there's always this like margin for error and margin for distortion. And man, that gets me in trouble because, I mean things well, and I really do seek the best for others, but sometimes it doesn't come across that way. And so, my wife, again, followed closely by my children, probably, and then my colleagues at work, they know, well, Dad is meaning well, and he wants what's best for us. And that covers a multitude of my sins, let me tell you. So, that's another one. It's just having grace with others and allow others to have grace with you, right? Because otherwise, if we're always keeping track of, who has wronged me and who have I wronged, and, we keep those kinds of scores, right? Again, it traps us. We become bitter and angry. And I mean, you've probably seen that in the lives of people who can't let go, who can't forgive, right? Who can't have a grace-filled life. So that's
especially now, right? Because
yeah.
As humans, most humans like to feel like we're in complete and total control of everything that's going on. And if we have a lack of control, we start to get all jittery. Right. Even people that are not control freaks, you still like to feel like you're in control of something. And when some areas of your life feel like they're out of control and you don't have a say in what's happening and all that goes away, it can amp you up and make you demand control in other areas and show its ugly head in ways that you may not even realize that you're doing. And I think everybody's going through a little bit of that right now. So to your point about grace, like, we don't know what anybody's dealing with outside of the time that we spend with them, right? When they're at home, they've got a different situation, whether it's something going on with their families, their extended families, their kids, somebody cut them off, they got in a car accident, their roof is falling off their house, whatever it is, we don't know. And so we only know them for this small window that we're spending time with them. And we need to give people that grace and understand that, we're all going through stuff.
Yep. One other thing, just tangentially related to what we're talking about here, is the idea of what is an argument? Like, what is the purpose? One of the things that through that Coursera class, again, that I've found really helpful since then is the idea of why do we have arguments? Like, why do we make arguments? They can be about anything. You'd brought up political things. I'm not going to touch those as an economist. There's no way. But there's other things, right? There are. You can use an argument to persuade somebody. Like the used car salesman, right? Like, hey, this car is shiny and red, therefore it's perfect for you, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be sound or valid or any of those things, but it's to persuade, to get you to do something that they want you to do, right?
Yeah.
And I think we see a lot of that in the media today is, I want you to behave a certain way. And if you don't, I'm going to shame you or judge you or whatever. We need to see, though, that really an argument, the reason for arguments is not to persuade, but to help people understand. Done right, the argument is not to persuade you, but to help you to, as well as possible, understand why I see something the way I do. Okay. Yeah. And if we did that, right, not only I think would we all be smarter and better off for it, but there would be a lot less conflict. It wouldn't be I'm right, you're wrong. It's, oh, Tony believes X, Y, Z because of this, that, and the other reason, right? And you've thought deeply about it, right? I mean, that's another thing. It's like before we say, oh, well, the world has to be this way or that way. Not only do you need to really deeply understand what you believe, but you got to spend some time looking at it from the best perspective of the opposing side as well.
Yeah,
right.
That's valid.
And I think that's huge. And I think, that'll serve us not just, if you decide to run for political office one day because of your charming personality, that's great, but, these ideas of like how we should think and how we should consider things like arguments, right? They can help us every day in our relationships with our colleagues, our bosses, those people who, maybe it's just our neighbor down the street, right? I don't have to be right and you have to be wrong. All I need to do is to be able to make a very clear reason, logical reason for why I think something, well, I think, and I wish we had more of that going on.
Yeah. I think what would help that is if, before we had an argument or a conversation or whatever you want to put in that key phrase, is we agree first that there's an issue, right? If we can agree that there's an issue that we both have a problem with and we don't know the solution together, now we can have a conversation about how to fix that. And, I give you permission to talk, you give me permission to talk. And it's not that I'm mad at you because you disagree with me. It's that we've got this thing over here that neither of us don't like, and we have to solve how to fix this.
Right.
What does that look like? Right. And not my way is better than your way, and your way is stupid and I hate you for it.
Exactly.
But we've got this thing, whatever this thing is, that we cannot solve. How do we work together to come up with the best rational, reasonable, viable solution for it, so that we can agree that, it's that common enemy, right? You got to find that common enemy to work on defeating.
Well, and together we bring each other to a better understanding of the problem, right? And I think that's lost today, is that, just because someone has a different view of the world doesn't mean that I can't learn from them. Right. We don't see that enough, I think. And in our personal lives, if we look at people who, maybe oppose us or just think differently, they're not the enemy,
Right.
I mean, gosh, that has burned me so many times in my career, right? Those people are not your enemy. They just think differently. We all want what's best for the company. We all want to succeed. If you have someone who's on your team and you guys are working on the same product, and you're all working to make, a company more profitable, you're all on the same team.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, you can have disagreements, but they're not the enemy.
And it's not personal.
Can be really hard, right? Because we want to do that. It's like, I want to be right, and therefore I want you to be wrong. And it becomes, this very, we allow it almost to sneak up on us, but we allow things to become almost too black and white, and again, like you said before, dealing with people is complicated and it's messy, right? We can't allow black and white to dominate what's truly all shades of gray.
Right. And when you say black and white, you're not talking about people. We're talking about issues and situations. No,
this is where understanding from my heart is everything.
I know. And listen, I don't want the 3 people listening to this at some point to go, Michael said the problem is black and white. The problem is not black and white. That's not what we're saying.
That's not what I'm saying.
And this, what we're saying is, there's gray area in a lot of things, and we got to be open to listening to other people and coming to some common agreements on things. Did you have another bit of mentor advice?
Let me see. So we kind of talked about this, but this is one of my own. Whoops, I dropped it. I have all of these note cards on my desk for this. But I said, be true to yourself. Be true to yourself. Focus on the internal, right? So this is Matthew 23:25. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of impurity. In the same way, on the outside you appear to be righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. I think we need to first and foremost always be working on ourselves, right? Yeah. But we're never done growing. There's a transformation that takes place within us, and it's a lifelong journey, right? So let's realize that, we are always evolving in that respect, and not to ever think that we've arrived.
Right.
Or otherwise, again, we're not going to ever solve cancer because someone told us cancer is not curable. And so, that's the end of the story. Right.
And here, even if you cure cancer, there's a next thing.
There you go. There's always something next. Right.
Right.
Right. Eventually I need you to work on that hyperdrive thing. I want to go faster than light speed. I want to be able to say, punch it, Chewy.
Work on it.
I want to be able to hear someone say, punch it, Chewy. And it actually happened. It's not just movie magic. Let's punch it for real.
I would agree with that. But you don't want that. That guy's not me.
Me neither.
That's not that.
Maybe it's our kids.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I think it's important to remember that we're all flawed, right?
Oh, absolutely.
All of us are deeply, deeply, deeply flawed. Right. But it's really easy to see those other flaws, or we'll call them sins, in other people. And they're usually the things that we don't like about that person, or the things that we don't like about ourselves, but we see them in that person, and it kind of just triggers us to recognize that. And I think it's important for us to remember that, right? That we are deeply flawed people.
Sure. We all are.
Yes.
Right. So, again, that's why we need to have grace with one another.
Yep.
And again, look for the best. Don't just assume that person is evil, mean, blah, 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 fill in the blank. Give them the benefit of the doubt, because people are giving us the benefit of the doubt. And just in general, life is a lot better when we all give each other the benefit of the doubt.
And even if the people around you are not giving you the benefit of the doubt, don't you wish they were?
Yeah. And it's not an excuse. That's a great point. That's not an excuse for us to retaliate.
Right.
We need to guard our hearts from that kind of stuff. Because if you don't guard your heart, you're going to end up living a second-rate life.
And not only that, but if you're being crushed by somebody heaping judgment or whatever on top of you, right? You know how that feels. You know what kind of position that puts you in. And if you can treat somebody better than the way that you're feeling right now, isn't that a good thing? Like, we have an opportunity to pay that forward and live our lives in a way that's different, and maybe shift the way that somebody else reacts to the next person they talk to, right? So if somebody's coming at you hot and with whatever, and you can minimize that and take it down a notch and talk to them as a human, and have empathy with them and give them that grace, well, the next conversation they have may be different. So you're helping that next person just by being kind and realizing they may not be in a good spot.
Yeah. So I've got another one for you here. 1 Thessalonians 5:14, right? And we urge you, brothers, and admonish the disorderly, console the discouraged, help the weak, be patient with everyone. Make sure no one pays back wrong for wrong, but always strive to do what is good for each other and for everyone else. Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances. So, this was not a setup. Like,
No.
You didn't know I had that card. That card was sitting right here when you said then. You had no idea. But absolutely, I agree with that, and it's for the good of ourselves. I find I think we kid ourselves if we go to work and act one way and then come home and try to act a different way with our kids, be that good, nice dad. And then you can go to work and kind of like
unload
on your colleagues because you're top dog or whatever. I think you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
I grew up in a family where my dad was a lot different, it sounds like, than yours. And I think he tried to have it both ways. And our kids are smart and they see through that.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't try to straddle the fence on that. You're gonna, and it's not being true to yourself either. How do you, again, it's kind of do you really want to try to spend that much energy being one person from 9 to 5 and being a different person, when you're at home? I think that's a level of precision that we just don't have.
Yeah. And I think the danger, not the danger, but I think maybe one of the hurdles to that is people a lot of times, it's getting better, but they don't see leadership as a position of they don't assume that the leadership position is going to allow for that, right? They think that they have to be the disciplinarian leader. They forget that there's another way to lead, to be a servant leader, to be an example leader, to do those things that that show the difference and get people wanting to follow with you, not be forced to, right? There's
when you become real, you become approachable, right? If you were the perfect leader, no one's going to approach you with any ideas. They're going to be like, well, Tony's got it all figured out and I'm just going to get in his way if I say anything or share any ideas, right? And then that hurts everybody.
Right. And there's a book that Greg Eidenberger from Paragon suggested to me, and it's a book that everybody at Paragon has to read. In leadership positions, he's told me that he's read it multiple times in different stages of his life, and it applies differently every time he reads it. And it's called The Servant, and it's about servant leadership and the way that Jesus led. And I would not assume when he gave me the book that that's what it was going to be about, because Paragon's a large company. They work in huge plastic injection molds for like the front ends of semis or ski-doos or things like that, right? And the fact that a book that was made mandatory by their ownership for all the leadership in the company to read is a book about Jesus and how Jesus leads is something that's pretty awesome, right? And not typical in maybe today's business world.
We're getting close, aren't we?
Here's the book.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
there it is. Nice.
And they're cheap on Amazon. If you want to buy one, they're relatively inexpensive, and you can buy it used. And it's just a great picture of what leadership can look like and should look like, and I think was always intended to look like.
Yeah. Well, I think to your point, just to kind of cap that all off, there are a few places we can go to get wisdom. There's a lot of good stuff in the Bible for sure.
Yeah.
And whether you believe the Bible or not, the wisdom that what's in it, it has good application for your life. Like, you're going to benefit whether you believe it or not. There's a lot that you're going to benefit from just by reading it. So yeah.
Yeah. And listen, Michael and I are believers. We're not going to beat anybody over the head with it. If you don't want to be, then you don't want to be, and that's okay too. But my hope is that the people that will listen to this will take that as an encouragement to lead that younger generation. Right? There's a lot of things that are missing right now in our lives, and and belief in something bigger than you is one of those things that I think is missing. In a time where nothing is right, nothing is wrong, or I guess everything is right and nothing is wrong, and we don't know what we should be doing. There's good application there, and you don't have to beat people over the head with what you believe, but you can live in such a way that's going to show them who you are and what you think is important. And I think just treating people in a way that helps you to stand out will do wonders for what we're talking about. And just humbling yourself. All of what we're talking about is, in this book, and it's in the big book. It's all about humility and having people around you, having that circle of people, and obedience, and doing the things that you think you're supposed to do, and asking for help when you need it. And it's chock full of those kind of applications. And I think it would help everybody and every business if we looked into that a little bit more.
Yeah. I think, one last thing, I know we've talked, I think, a lot about sort of how the older ones of us need to be speaking into the younger members of our, industry. The other thing is I would encourage those younger people who are listening to ask someone, hey,
Right.
think of someone that you respect, and you know who you respect, and the guys who have good temperaments, the guys who you want to, one day kind of, um, emulate some of what they do. We don't want to just be carbon copies of the boss or whatever, but there are going to be those guys at your workplace, right, who you just know have wisdom, right? We can see it, and ask them. Go up and say, hey, I really appreciate, what you're doing, or, I still have a lot. I did this when I was like 25. I basically went up to a guy who I knew really well. He was an athletic runner guy and I was in cycling. So like there was a little bit of a natural connection there. And I said, hey, I know I don't have it all figured out. Would you be willing to, have coffee with me, or just, let's do lunch? Cause we all had lunch at the same time. So it was like perfect. I was like, hey, Ron, can we just have lunch together once in a while? I want to ping some ideas off of you. And that was great. He didn't approach me because he didn't know I needed it, or I wanted it. Right. He can't read my mind. Another issue we need to talk about on another chat and chow is like, don't expect people to read your mind. But, I think a lot of people don't realize that it's okay to approach somebody and say, hey, would you have an interest in essentially mentoring me without saying it? I think a lot of people would be happy to do it. I've found very few people who aren't at some level interested in doing that. So go for it. Again, like I said before, just do it.
And we also have our own insecurities, where as somebody that's in their 40s, right, I'm going to go, why do I think somebody that's in their 20s wants to talk to me about anything, much less life or work or whatever? They don't want to hang out with me. They want to hang out with the people that are in their 20s and 30s. Not the old guy.
Right. Exactly. So, or the other great misconception, like you said before, is that the young guy assumes that we have it all figured out and don't have time for them. Right. We don't have it all figured out, just in case you wanted to know. And I'm pretty convinced that the people who are ahead of us, they have more of it figured out, maybe, but not certainly all of it. None of us do. So there's
figured out. I'm gonna go with not figured out.
There you go. Makes two of us. At least there are two of us who don't have it all figured out. But
so somehow that's been an hour and 5 minutes already.
I know. It goes fast.
It does.
It goes fast when we're having fun.
I don't understand how people do these interviews for like 15 minutes. Like that was hello.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, it's harder to get into the depth of things. Absolutely. But this was awesome, Tony. Thank you so much for having me. Again, if I want to make this really brief, we've talked about big businesses and small business. You had mentioned it before. When it comes to big firms versus small firms. One of the cool things we see in our data and the whole Gardner Intelligence product is that small firms behave very differently from big firms. In a large part, we find that it's out of fear. A lot of times smaller firms can be leery of making a choice, whether it's raising prices, changing their supply chain, whatever. And it's been really interesting for me over the last couple of years to see how small businesses they don't procrastinate like because they're lazy. They procrastinate sometimes out of fear of making a choice and the consequences from that. But pardon me, but what I just want to let your audience know before we leave is, we've done a lot to help firms in that regard, helping small firms see from a perspective that they can't otherwise always get. And we've helped a lot of firms, because if you're going to sit there and hold the line on prices, especially today, when supply chains are all over the place and prices for metals, copper, you name it. I mean, the pricing is just all over the place, right? I think that there's a lot of good that we can do in Gardner to help those firms craft a strategy for, the next year and beyond. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. One last thing before we adjourn.
So how do people do that? How do people reach Gardner to start to develop that dialogue, that strategy and dialogue?
Yeah. So the easiest way to do it is contact@gardnerweb.com, or just go to gardnerintelligence.com. Our website's got a contact page. Just click on that link, do your little text box entry thing. Just say, "Hey, Michael, I want to talk to you." Boom. That's all you have to say. I'll follow up with you and we can go from there. So just a little one-liner. Yeah.
And Michael's he's also on LinkedIn, so you can find him on there. And I'm sure if you send him a message, he'll point you in the right direction. But it's not surprising that everything at Gardner is good, right? And you guys are doing well. You've continued to be a leader in not just one industry, but multiple industries, and putting out, whether it's putting on trade shows or magazines or webinars or podcasts, or adapting and changing and growing to accommodate what new business looks like. It seems like Gardner has always done a good job and been at the forefront of innovation and trying to serve their customer and their reader and the industry. So, thank you guys for that. I know that you're a small part of that, but a big part of that. And, maybe they'll listen and hear that. But I mean it, from the ownership down. I mean, everybody I've ever met over there has been
they're dedicated,
caring and dedicated.
Yeah.
And wanting to see us succeed and be better. So I appreciate what Gardner brings to our industry.
Yeah. Tony, again, thank you so much for the time today.
Yeah. So unfortunately, LinkedIn didn't work well. So do you have any prayer requests that you would like us to have or talk about on or pray through, I should say. I was trying to do multiple things at once.
So, me personally?
Yeah.
Just that we don't, sorry, I hadn't thought about an answer to that question.
The one thing I caught you on. Yes.
You did. You
don't have a note card for that one.
No, I don't. Just not to get caught up in what everyone else is saying. It's funny how, a lot of people, I think what I'm seeing, you go and read the Wall Street Journal. So again, we've established firmly that I'm pretty geeky. You go and you read the Wall Street Journal. If you look at the most popular articles, because every website every news site has their most popular picks. I'm finding that more and more of it is opinion, and less of it is journalism. Based on journalism excellence. I think we just need to be careful about seeing the difference, like distinguishing between somebody's opinion and what's reality. I think that's getting us as a country into some difficult situations, and that's across the board. I'm not saying that that's a blue-red thing, just in general, people are I think promoting opinion as fact. And we need to be diligent in doing our own research, educating ourselves on both sides, right? There's a great book called The Lost Tools of Learning. It's a classical education book. It's fantastic. It really teaches us something that has been unique in our education system, which is, if we teach children how to learn, right, they can do anything. But if you get to the point where everything becomes a test and it's a fill in the blank, that's not learning anymore. That's just regurgitation. And I get a little worried about that. Are we as dads and as a country teaching our kids how to think or just what to think?
Yeah.
And if we start teaching them just what to think, we're doing them a huge disservice. So that's my prayer. It's a big one.
It's a good one though. Because it impacts a lot of our lives.
Yeah, it does.
It impacts every part of our lives, right? So, yeah. So we'll pray, and then we can go about our day. So,
awesome.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for Michael, for his leadership, for his boldness, for the ways that you've used him to not only help companies and people get data, but also to grow as humans. We pray that you would be with everybody that listens to this now, in the future, forever. That you would bless us with ideas of discernment and being able to see both sides of arguments and not react, but to listen and to work for the greater good, not just for our own good. Help us to realize that whatever struggles we're going through, whatever difficulties we have in mind, that you're bigger than them, and that you're going to use them for our good and for your glory. Amen. And we just pray that you would watch over us, that you would make short order of this COVID, that we could all get back to the way things were. But when we get back to them, remember that you're in charge, and not lose sight of the benefits that we've seen over the last year and the lessons that we've learned. So we thank you for all you do, all that you are. And we're glad that you're in control and we're not. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Tony.
My friend, it was great talking with you.
I
would love to do this again when everything is working. And I'll send you the stuff so you can push that out and get other people to listen to it. I think it's all important stuff. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on here. I'm saying that because you're on here and you got more to say than I do. And so thank you. And thank you for all that you're doing in the industry. I really appreciate the time that you have. And the fact that you reached out to me and wanted to do this. So that was great. And thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much too. And I'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
See ya.
Bye. All right. This always happens. I don't understand. We got to get you out of here. I'm going to go to pin this one. All right. So I just want to thank everybody once again for watching the Manufacturing Alliance podcast. I know that it was an hour and change, but I think we covered a lot of good stuff. We want to do this to help you grow. This is not about me just talking and rambling or having on my friends. It's trying to find ways to help manufacturing and the industry grow and learn and get better. I think that we all have the opportunity to do that. We all have, like Michael said, the opportunity to learn from each other. And we just need to be open and humble to doing that. Coming up, we've got a lot of good guests. We've got David Masato from UMass Lowell, Mercedes Lanzarote from Peacock Colors, Jeremy Dworshak from 3M, Denise Senfeldben from GMN Nameplate. And then we've got some rising stars that are going to be coming on the show. Haley Ann Friedman and Rudy Dell are going to be joining us and talking about what they're seeing as a rising star, as a younger person in our industry. So, once again, on behalf of myself and Alliance Specialties and Laser Sales, Michael Guckes and Gardner Business Intelligence and the whole group, I just want to say thank you for watching. Take care and God bless.